Hello and welcome to another SHM movie review, and in this particular review, as you'll have seen from the title, we are reviewing and breaking down a slightly older film than you usually see reviews for, a 1948 movie by the name of Rope. Now, you've probably never heard of this film, you've probably never seen this film, but it's not a failure. It's just, by the nature of the fact that it is an older film, a lot of people just haven't got around to seeing it. Those who have seen the film generally like it, though. It's a film which really does a lot for me personally, because when it comes to movies, I love movies that do a lot with a little. It's very easy to be entertained by a movie that has explosions and monsters and aliens all over the place. If you can take a film that occurs in only one or two settings, with only a few characters, and make that genuinely interesting, compelling and rewatchable, that to me is about the highest level of attainment that a movie could have, because that really is doing the most with what you have to work with, and that is exactly what Rope represents. It's directed by Alfred Hitchcock, the master of suspense, one of the most respected directors of all time. It's a relatively short film, only 80 minutes long, and it doesn't have a particularly large cast. There are only 9 people in the film. And the film follows 2 primary characters, played by John Dool and Farley Granger, who are in a prep school, and basically they decide to commit the perfect murder, and then invite various people to the scene of the crime, with the body being hidden right among them, to prove that they are intellectually superior to these people without the people realizing what's going on. Sounds like a relatively simple plot. There are a lot of movies that revolve around the perfect murder concept, and this is one of the earlier films to do it, and especially to do it well. Now, the most famous person in the film is probably Jimmy Stewart's character, who plays the prep school housemaster of the prep school where these 2 guys go to. And it's Jimmy Stewart's character that these characters are trying to prove themselves intellectually against the most. They clearly look up to him, they respect him, but at the same time, they kind of want to outdo him. And as the film progresses, you start to notice things about the film which are very impressive. Not just the fact that it does a lot with a little, but the fact that the dialogue, which could quite easily be boring and mundane, is very interesting. All the time. There are twists and turns throughout the film, learning how different people relate to the deceased character, etc. Another thing that you might notice about the film is, due to the very clever editing and very long takes, the entire film is actually presented in real time. Those 80 minutes of film are actually 80 minutes of a story. It doesn't cut between different time periods like pretty much every other film does. It's real time. You are seeing the situation as it happens, and that's really cool. Not very many films at all actually do that. Now, as far as our ratings, for the story and plot, I'm going to give this film a 7, because although it doesn't have a huge amount to work with, what it does with the tools that it's given is fantastic. It is a brilliant murder mystery. And one of the reasons why it's so good is that, like some of the other greatest murder mysteries, it's told from the viewpoint of the murderers, instead of those who find out about the murderers, or in some cases, don't find out about the murderers. That's different. It presents a new twist on the genre. And for doing so much with so little, I'm giving it a 7. As far as the characters and their motivations, well, this is a very important category, possibly even the most important category for a film like this. Films that are much older don't have special effects and explosions and aliens and all that kind of stuff to really depend on. The films that did use those things back then tended to be not quite as good. Most of the films that were good from that era were dialogue driven. It was about the characters and their interplay. So those characters need to be good. You need to be able to root for them, or at least be interested in how their lives pan out. And in the case of this story, that is definitely delivered on very well. So for that, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. As far as the visuals and effects, well, as I said, it takes place in real time. It all takes place in one room, so there aren't really that many visual effects to go on. The film is from 1948, so it's not necessarily the richest visual film you'll ever see. It's better than many other films I've seen, though, especially newer ones of a lower budget. So I am going to give it an above average score of 6 out of 10. That is above our baseline of 5. Because although the film doesn't have a huge amount of visuals to take in, it does actually manage to keep one room and 9 characters interesting throughout 80 minutes of runtime. And that's a serious achievement. As far as the audio and music, it doesn't really stand out. It complements the film, it blends into the film, it does what it should do. You don't want the music to completely take over and detract from the story, and it doesn't do that. So I am going to give the music and sound overall a baseline of 5 out of 10. It's not remarkable, but it does what it needs to. And finally, for the rewatchability and entertainment factor, which is of course the most subjective to me personally, I'm going to give this film a 6 out of 10. Because it's not necessarily the most rewatchable of movies. It's not the kind of film that you'll watch and necessarily immediately want to watch again. But it's certainly a very entertaining film, especially the first time you watch it due to the suspense. And the characters are enjoyable to watch. They're compelling. You want to see how it plays out. And if you are a fan of older movies, but also movies that are dialogue driven, and certainly people are fans of those kind of movies, I am myself, and it's not a dead art. The Hateful Eight recently showed that films like that can still do extremely well critically and commercially. And this film is for fans of dialogue-driven movies and murder mysteries and thrillers, that kind of genre. A great film. And if you haven't had the chance to check out Rope, I would definitely recommend that you do so. So, our overall tabulated score for Rope is a 3.2 out of 5, which is very respectable for a 1948 film involving 9 people in one room in real time. A seriously good score considering those factors. But that's it overall for this review of Alfred Hitchcock's Rope. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.